When I get forgetful or I miss a meeting or I do something like that, I have this whole reaction. And then I get stuck in my head, or I can get stuck in my head in this, I'm a loser, I'm a failure, no one's gonna like me. I'm absorbed in this narrative that I'm just a piece of shit and I'm a loser. For me, it was simply, I don't want to feel like shit anymore. I hate this, and I'm so sick and fucking tired of it that either my life's going to get really dark, really bad, and really beyond words, or I'm going to start doing something different. For me, it was as simple as, I don't ever want to feel like how I used to feel ever again. And I drew a line in the sand. And that's what we need to do. Hi. If you are watching this, or if you are sitting with me in a room, it's obvious that you are at a point where you want something to be different. Or you know how things are going is not okay. You are no longer ignoring the little voice in the back of your head that's saying, you need to stop doing this, or you shouldn't be doing this, or you should be doing these other things, or you need to change, or whatever it is that you're doing is not okay. And if you would only stop, or if you would only do something else, then perhaps your life would be better, or perhaps you wouldn't be suffering so badly. I know for me, whenever I became aware of that voice at a pretty young age, because I started treating myself quite poorly at a young age, that voice got so loud, and no matter how much I stuffed it away with drugs or alcohol or bad behaviors, it wouldn't go away. It just kept coming back and getting stronger and stronger. And finally, at some point, I couldn't ignore it anymore. If you are at that place, or you are not at that place, wherever it is that you are on this journey, I hope that I can accompany you, or I can guide you, or encourage you, or push you hard, or be very kind and gentle, whatever it is that you need in order to move in that direction. Because certainly staying where we are is not acceptable. There's a tremendous amount of relief that happens when we cross that bridge, or when we stop stuffing. Acknowledging a problem and not doing anything about it is almost worse than still pretending that everything's okay. Part of this journey is learning to come into relationship with the way things are, as opposed to the way we wish things were, or think they ought to be, or what other people say they should or ought to be. So you can just say, I don't want my life to be like this. I don't know what the future's gonna hold. I don't per se know exactly what I want, but I certainly know I don't want this. Pain is inevitable. Some people would argue that pain is the only real thing in the universe for humans. We can't clearly describe other experiences, but we can clearly describe pain. So after acknowledging that, accepting that, and saying you don't want it to be like this anymore, then the door opens, or then the path clears somewhat. And at least perhaps you don't know where you're going, but you know where you don't want to be. And so you don't want to go that way. You're going anywhere but that way, which is usually that way. And that's a good place to be, because you know where you're going. And without knowing, in some sense, where you're going or what you're going away from, it's very hard to move forward. I think it's very important to lay a foundation or a framework upon which this idea of why do I want to change, can rest or can be built. Because if we don't dig a deep foundation for why and for how we're going to change, then when life comes and inevitably kicks us in the nuts or in the face or in the privates, then we don't have that foundation upon which we won't crumble. If you have established a line in the sand, a pole in the ground, a why, so to speak, that's wonderful. And that's a huge part of the process. So if you have done that, you now would want to understand, okay, who am I? What is going on with me? And how might I gain some insight about that so that I can really start changing my life? A framework for understanding ourselves. It's very simple and straightforward. Self-awareness. How do we develop that self-awareness? There's many different ways. There's many, again, different approaches. I think a very clear, straightforward doorway into developing self-awareness starts with just understanding simply how does the human mind, nervous system work at a very basic level. There's all kinds of journaling practices and tools out there. There's all kinds of things that you can use to help with this. But simply just writing down, what is happening in this moment? Where am I? What's going on? Then we can start breaking it down into sort of the internal landscape. And if we come from a human well-being perspective, this can be broken down into thoughts, emotions or feelings, sensory experience. So what does it feel like inside my body? Behavior, and then perception or awareness. So I have thoughts, feelings and emotions, body sensations, behaviors, and my ability to perceive those things happening, or to be aware that these things are happening while they're happening. We want to start with just this understanding of our body is always in relationship with the external environment. And our body, or our nervous system, is trying to keep us alive, certainly, but also try to keep us in balance and keep us kind of going towards what we deem important. To understand what influences that, right? Because if we're in a place of suffering or where we don't want to be, clearly our nervous system is not guiding us in the direction that is good for us. So for me, a big trigger, forgetfulness, disorganization. On the other side of our moment-to-moment experiences, in one context, it's called a modifier, or just life circumstance. So if I'm having relationship issues or job stress or an illness in the family or social strife, that's also going to influence how I interpret my moment-to-moment experience. So those things being said are all part of it. Okay, let's go back to my example of forgetfulness. When that happens, there's an internal reaction. Okay, and that internal reaction is a mix of my feelings or emotions, my thoughts, my body sensations, my impulses, my perception or my awareness of all these things happening, and then behavior. And these things all kind of mush together and happen so fast that we have no real chance to kind of stop it. What we're trying to learn is to notice, to become aware of, to perceive these things happening as they happen. So we'll go back to this thing of forgetfulness for me. So that's the trigger. A modifier might be recovering drug addict, might be all the other things happening in my life in that moment. The forgetfulness piece happens. So instantly for me, I get tense. I get contracted. It's another simplistic way to understand body sensations. We're either contracted or we're open. Contraction, openness. So I get aware, become aware that I forgot something. Instant contraction. I get tense. I usually get frustrated and angry and fucking irate really quickly. So those things happening. Then my thoughts kick into high gear. I'm such an idiot. I'm such a failure. Why am I so stupid? What's wrong with me? I'm never going to learn how to do this properly. And if it's in relationship to I forgot to meet someone, call someone, or I missed a meeting or something, then my mind goes into the projections of this person's going to think I'm an idiot. This person's never going to want to talk to me again. I'm such a failure. And this whole narrative starts to play out in our thoughtscape. Now, everyone has a different narrative or thought pattern to their experience. And part of this self-awareness is just to understand, what is my story? What is the theme of my stress response? But what we want to do is to get into the habit of taking the actions. So we develop the self-awareness. With that awareness, we start taking actions. And that, in my opinion, is best done through a self-compassion practice. Another word for self-compassion is inner strength. Whatever words you want to use, doesn't matter. And that's what I'm going to talk about next. So self-compassion has three main components: mindfulness versus self-absorption, common humanity versus isolation, and self-kindness versus self-criticism. There's a lot of assumptions and beliefs that people often have when they hear the word self-compassion, or when they are presented with the potential to actually try to implement this into their life. So we're going to just run through a little compassion practice, self-compassion practice, where I can show you how these things kind of work together. So the first thing to do is to sit in a posture, okay, that embodies dignity. So we're going to come and sit. And we're going to allow ourselves to breathe for a minute or so, or a few moments. Perhaps you can just do a little body scan, checking in with your body, the chair, the bed, where you're making contact with it. And again, allowing yourself to breathe, maybe letting out a nice sigh. So I'll stick with this notion of me being forgetful, right, or being disorganized, okay? So I'll ask you, bring a situation to mind that you struggle with, that's difficult for you, okay, in which you get stuck and lost and caught in a place you don't like to be. And perhaps checking in with your body sensations, any narratives going on in your mind. Okay, so this is the mindfulness, right? We're not lost in the story. We're not stuck in our mind. We're noting, we're aware of what's happening. Sometimes you can do this from the beginning, but oftentimes at this point in a practice like this, you'd be invited to bring yourself from some comforting touch or soothing touch. So for me, that's simply putting my hand over my chest or my heart. Okay, there's something quite comforting about that practice. So I'm just inviting you to do that now if that seems right for you. Sometimes people like to give themselves a hug, or to put their hands on their cheeks, right? Or to sort of gently pat themselves, whatever's going to work for you, okay? And if that's not something that you think you want to do in this moment, that's okay too. And the neuroscience of this says that when we bring ourselves comforting touch, we help to release oxytocin in our bodies, which helps us feel safe and protected and comforted. Right, and so for the next few moments, you can keep your hand on your chest or wherever it is that you want, or you can bring it back into your lap. Just tuning back into your body. Okay. I hope that was helpful for you. There's a lovely saying, people overestimate what they can accomplish in 1 year and underestimate what they can accomplish in 10. So that's a nice reminder. Stay in the present moment, do the next right thing. And it's not just me, many people are examples of this, but 10 years from now, you will wake up and wonder how the fuck you got here, and what a miracle it is that you are here now. Okay? So I wish you the best. Peace out.